Hello, everybody. It's been a long day, but exciting day. I was just asked if someone needed to introduce me. No, I think by now you are all ready to just absorb what we've heard. I think what I can really say is innovation at this juncture is exciting, as have shown the discussions today. We have talked about, I've just gone through my notes, scalability and Buterin's trilemma. We've talked about backdoors and cross-chain bridges. We've talked about, an interesting one, algorithmical financial stability. That's one I'll have to come back because I'm not sure I yet see the world where central banks can be totally replaced by algorithm, but we're here to discuss these things. We've talked about sandwich attacks, which, by the way, is not that different, also in high-frequency trading, where there are these kind of issues. We've talked about old things like narrow banking, and even geopolitical assets. I'll stop here. So clearly very exciting, and clearly a world where much expertise and knowledge needs to come together to tackle the challenges that we are all confronted with, challenges and opportunities. I will not rise to the challenge tonight of trying to do a summary. No, I've decided that is not what I'm going to be doing. What I want to do is one step back and try to think about what we've heard today, what does it mean, what have we learned about today's financial system, and what can we learn from today's financial system and also from tomorrow's financial system. In fact, I want to come to the one question that was posed earlier today, whether DeFi and traditional finance will continue to evolve largely in parallel, or whether they will integrate. I think Augustin Carsten mentioned, will it collide or complement with will DeFi collide or complement with the existing system? Initially, if you remember, DeFi started out with the ambition of really becoming an alternative and parallel world to traditional finance. Even today, DeFi is still often considered self-referential, really working only with crypto assets for the crypto universe. In DeFi, we've seen it, we've heard the main unit of exchange are stablecoins. In contrast, in traditional finance, we have a combination of central bank money and book money, commercial bank money. But today, there's one thing is clear, is there's no seamless integration of these worlds. There are gateways that are starting to be appearing, and I'm not just talking about the cross-chain bridges, but real gates between these two worlds. And I believe that this development, and we've seen it today, really has potential for the future and on both sides. I think it would help traditional finance gain efficiencies. And on the other hand, it would certainly help DeFi profit from the introduction of more traditional securities and particularly the real asset, the real economy assets, to bring them also in the same world. So in my view, what we've learned today, that is what I take away a lot about, in order to see, if you were to ask me, how do I see the world in 5 years? Central banker never answers this question, but it depends on how are these two worlds going to be approaching? What is the approachement? How do they integrate into the future? And how do they integrate it smartly? What kind of, yes, our world, yes, what kind of regulation, but I think more importantly, smart contracts, how do we make them not only smart, but also safe? So let me this is where I want to take a step back. I quickly want to go back to after having heard the whole day about DeFi, I want to go back to what does today's financial system look like? Well, I guess the traditional finance is the way we should be talking about it. Yes, I'm talking about the two-tier financial system, right? The two-tier financial system, what is it? Is where we have a strong core of the financial system that supports, that ensures there's safety and trust in the financial system. What is it? Yes, it is central bank money. It is RTGS system to ensure payments, and it is also a lender of last resort function of the central bank. So this creates a strong core of the financial system. But then you have the outer core. The outer core is where the private sector comes, the banks do take risk. And I think that's an important part, is that in the traditional financial system, yes, we do talk about regulation, but risk-taking is an incredibly important and central part of any modern economy. Risk is needed for innovation, for investment, for loan taking. And so the traditional world, what I'm trying to get at is you have a system with systemically important flows of transaction are done using central bank currency, because that is the risk-free asset that reduces the risk in the system. And on the other hand, you have banks, I'm talking here, banks, financial institutions that take risk. And they're allowed to take risk, and in fact have to take risk, the whole disintermediation of the system. And they have to go into the real economy and take that function. And the question for me, the most interesting question at this juncture is, how can we replicate this system? So the system that is both safe, has a safe, whether it's a core, I know it's a DeFi, so the core might look very different, but where you have really a safe element in the system, and yet that allows risk-taking in the system to thrive for the real economy. I think Hui Xin asked the question a little bit differently. He asked it, can you get decentralization without speculation? I know he was trying to be a little bit cheeky, but I think that is, how have we managed to bring this balance between safety and trust in the financial sector, and yet the right incentive for risk-taking? So let me now go to the DeFi world. I have to be careful. So if you think about risk-taking, much of the activity or much of the monetary function today in the DeFi world is through asset-backed stablecoins. We know they're very useful, they are needed in this system. There are clearly also risks, right? We've talked about a number of them, whether it's market integration or fraud risk, whether it's run risk, right? If there suddenly is a convertibility issue. Thomas, you showed even the article today in the Wall Street with Tether. And you also have what I found really interesting, that discussion on what are stable coins. Okay, we've talked about non-custodial, but custodial, but collateralized. But ultimately, this idea, a stable coin is stable because that is how it maintains its trust. But a stable coin, ultimately, if it is really stable, if it really is fully collateralized, which some of you think is really the way it's going to go forward, is really a narrow banking system. And then I thought it was fascinating to think, is that a good thing? Because that's going to make it so high demand that that is going to be the asset that everybody wants? Or is it going to be uninteresting because narrow banking ultimately doesn't allow leverage, ultimately doesn't allow the kind of things that we allow in traditional finance, right? We allow central banks to use commercial bank money to ultimately take leverage, make loans, engage in a number of activities. So this is, to me, where it's really interesting to understand what is the purpose of these stable coins and how can they integrate into the virtual universe. So one way is, I think, where, and also as a central bank, is, to me, it seems it makes sense that stable coins need to be smartly, but they need to be regulated. They need ultimately to be integrated in order to play a very similar form than book money plays today in the traditional financial system. So this is for the risk-taking part. And then, yes, you do need a risk-free asset. You probably do need central bank money, not everywhere, but where you have systemically important flows of transaction, then it is really helpful to have central bank money. We've seen it also in the last crisis over again. So where does this leave me? I really liked Fabien Cher, who started in your opening, in your presentation. You actually answered two questions that are very crucial here. Does DeFi need CBDC? I quote his answer, no. But it was also picked up a number of times. And the other question was, does CBDC help DeFi? And you answered maybe or possibly. What would my take be out of this? In my view, so does DeFi need CBDC? I think for me, the question is not so much does it need CBDC. For me, DeFi ultimately needs to be integrated in one ecosystem. Ultimately, money needs to be fungible to have the trust, and ultimately we need to find a way to have one ecosystem, and from that premise, you get, that also means same activities need to be regulated, not in the same way, but the risks need to have the same approach. And to the second question, does CBDC help DeFi? I think there we've seen it's really going to be about, it is about asking the question, what is the role of CBDC, of central bank money in this question, the role of central banks more generally, or whether you can replace them with algorithm, and what is the role of regulation. So for me, it's not only CBDC, but again, it's the broader, it's having CBDC that interact with the rest of the system. It's about a system that allows for innovation, continuing innovation, that allows for risk-taking. Absolutely, we need this, but it does it in a way that is sustainable and successful. So for me, a future with two parallel financial worlds would lead to regress and not progress. The ultimate goal should be an integrated financial system that both fully leverages the technological innovation to address the long-standing shortcomings of the traditional financial sector and ensures trust and safety for its users. This goal will not be achieved by central banks only and not by regulators only, but it really requires decisive action from the private sector and the public sector. And this is why an event like today is really precious, because it allows all of us to come to common understanding how we think and from which perspective we come. Many questions are yet to be addressed. That's why we look forward for further similar or other dialogues. But to me, today has been a great learning experience. So I also want to thank every single participants and discussant and people we've been able to share during the breaks. It is the promise for a successful cooperation. This is also a very, in Switzerland, we like to talk, we like consensus-based, and I'm not talking about protocols here, but I think it is very important, and it's been really wonderful for me, for all of us. So in the name of the SNB, I would like to thank you for your participation at today's event, and I'd like to thank the BIS. Where is Martin? I've lost him. He is somewhere. There you go. I'd like to thank the BIS Innovation Hub for the great cooperation, for the great brainstorming we have together, and for working together. Merci beaucoup.